You've likely heard of WordPress, the content management system that's powering millions of websites around the world. But here in Ottawa, a startup is taking aim at the CMS giant. QuickSilk is making a bold pitch to website creators considering WordPress, Squarespace, Wix, or one of the other big names dominating the industry. Think very carefully about what you might be giving up. We'll be speaking to CEO Garry Brownrigg about how the company is gaining traction in a competitive marketplace, as well as his inspiring personal story about how he broke into Ottawa's tech sector. That's this week on Techopia Live. Welcome to Techopia Live. I'm your host this week, Peter Cavesi. Today we're here at Bayview Yards talking about a made-in-Ottawa SaaS CMS platform that's taking on some of the biggest names in the industry. QuickSilk's platform is used by the Parliamentary Budget Office, the Canadian Breast Cancer Network, and the World Bank, among others. Joining us today are QuickSilk CEO Garry Brownrigg, as well as Susan Richards of NumberCrunch, one of the sponsors of Techopia Live. Welcome to you both. Susan, let's start with you. Can you tell us briefly about NumberCrunch and how it helps local tech companies?
It would be my pleasure to. So NumberCrunch is a combination of CFOs, controllers, and bookkeepers. And what we do is provide startups, small businesses, medium scaling businesses with a more powerful and cost-effective alternative to hiring full-time accounting staff.
Fantastic. So we're going to tap into your insights a little bit more later on. But Garry, let's dive right into it. What is the problem with WordPress?
Thanks, Peter, and thanks for having us today. We're not against open source. I want to be very clear about that from the start. What we have an issue with is software that's infected and not properly managed. So what we've found, having worked over the past 20 years on 20 different content management systems and having deployed applications in 19 countries and 14 languages, is that there is a bunch of common pain points. And in the content management system market, there's a built-in compromise. Organizations are being forced to choose between simplicity, affordability, and security. So on the low end of the market, you can have the simplicity of a simple page builder like a Wix, a Weebly, a Squarespace, which are relatively inexpensive and easy to use, but they don't have the enterprise functionality. On the high end of the market, you have the SharePoints or the Adobes, which are very complex and very expensive, but not easy to use. So the middle market's been filled by open source software like WordPress and Drupal and Joomla. It's relatively easy to use, it's relatively expensive, but it's highly insecure.
Susan, before we started rolling, we were talking about Garry's business model, and you had a really interesting observation. You called it a reverse SaaS business model. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Absolutely. So what's really interesting from a financing standpoint is that Garry's business originally started as a service business. And when you launch a product company out of that, there's going to be some challenges early on. And Garry had identified that, in fact, he had difficulty fundraising from angel investors with respect to the product. That said, it was that basis of service that actually catapulted him into having marquee clients for his first, second, and third client. And I think we're going to see more companies like this. So we're used to software as a service. What we're going to hear more and more about is service as a software, full stack around the service. Maybe, Garry, you want to comment on that a little more?
Yeah, absolutely. What we found, having worked with our clients, is that when we first developed the platform in 2010, the opportunity came to us through a service project. And we found that by taking that approach, that our clients were very appreciative of the fact that they were getting a product or a solution that was delivered to their needs. So over time, we replicated that model with the Canadian government, with the World Bank, with the Canadian Breast Cancer Network, with the Financial Accountability Office of Ontario. And we've ended up now in a situation where we have a 99.5% client retention rate, which is significant in this business. And that's not just a 12-month period, that's over a course of 8 years.
So you've mentioned some of the clients that you work with. You've also sort of mentioned some of the big names out there that are in this space. Of course, as you mentioned, you're not just competing against WordPress. You're competing against Adobe, competing against Wix, competing against, I have to say, all those names that are often popping up on ads that I see when I'm online. Tell me, how do you build brand awareness when you're competing in such a competitive marketplace?
Yeah, it is a very competitive. It's a great question. It's a very competitive marketplace. It's a very large marketplace, and that's one of the challenges that we've faced since we started the company. How do we differentiate ourselves? And we found going to the market, we led off initially with a security message. Our platform was tested last November after 80 years of development by an independent security firm in Atlanta, Georgia called ControlScan. And they came back and they found there was no critical vulnerabilities in our software and only 3 high vulnerabilities, which we fixed in 2 days. So we went out and led with a security message as a differentiator, but what we found is every time we did a demo, what sold the client was the ease of use of the product. So we focus very much our digital marketing efforts now on the combination of ease of use and security.
It's my understanding that your journey into tech actually came as a result of a personal experience. Can you tell us a little bit about your career path?
Yeah, for sure. So in 1989, 1990, I lost the functional capability to speak. Over a course of 3 to 6 months, I was working at the Royal Bank at the time, and my voice just sort of gradually faded and faded and faded. I went through 23 different medical specialists seeking a diagnosis, and the internet at that time didn't have the resources it has in terms of trying to figure out what you have. But I did eventually self-diagnose myself after a 5-year period, took it to a neurologist at the Ottawa Pacific Hospital who confirmed the diagnosis of laryngeal dystonia. And laryngeal dystonia causes involuntary spasms in your vocal cords. It got bad enough for me that to one point for 15 years, I had limited to no speech whatsoever. And with this disorder, you can scream and you can whisper, but you can't talk. And I only recently learned last year that Robert Kennedy Jr. has the same disorder, and Scott Adams, the Dilbert cartoonist, has the same order. But for a period back in the 1990s when nobody could tell me what it was a very frustrating experience, but it's also become a very rewarding experience for me because it's sort of taken me to this path.
Can you elaborate a bit on how it took you into that path?
Yeah, I've been a banker for an 8-year period with the Royal Bank of Canada, and what I found when I lost the capability to speak is I could communicate quite well through email, but I couldn't do it in person. So I literally spent 15 years in my home office doing desktop publishing, doing different consulting gigs, etc., because I could share my knowledge and share my experience through the internet. So I like to jokingly say that, and really the time frame of my age, I mean, I sort of started this from the time the internet was born.
So we are running short on time, but I was wondering very briefly, earlier this spring, QuickSilk had some big news. Can you tell us the significance of becoming a HubSpot integrator?
Yeah, absolutely. HubSpot is the #1 marketing automation platform and #2 CRM in North America for small to medium-sized business. So we saw and we see this integration that we've had with HubSpot as a huge market credibility in this marketplace with these clients. We've also recently just announced a API platform integration and agreement with Shutterstock, the #1 photo stock library in the world. So we're developing very significant partnerships so we can bring enterprise value to our clients.
Fantastic. Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there, but I really enjoyed the conversation, and we're looking forward to continuing to watch QuickSilk's progress in the coming years.
Appreciate that.
Great. Gary, Susan, thank you so much for joining us. Before we leave, I want to thank some of the sponsors without whom this show would not be possible. Number Crunch, offering virtualized CFO services for SaaS companies. Perley Robertson, Hill & McDougall, a leader in business and tech law. TD Bank, with specialized programs for tech firms. University of Ottawa Faculty of Engineering, creating the next generation of technical talent. Stratford Managers, providing services to help you scale your tech ventures. And KRP Properties, offering so much more than just space. Techopia Live is so much more than just this great show. We're online with daily articles at obj.ca/Techopia. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Techopia OTT. If you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to click the like button, subscribe, and leave us a comment. And make sure to sign up for our free weekly newsletter at techopia.email. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again next week for another episode of Techopia Live.